All right, can everybody hear me in the back? All right, if you can, if I trail off, just holler. And I have to give a big thank you to whoever put the program together, because the previous panel was a really nice segue into the project that I'm working on. And I am working on a watershed protection plan for the Upper Llano River. And there are two key words in this presentation: proactive and healthy. In general, we have watershed protection plans that are initiated in impaired water bodies. And so they're reactive rather than being proactive. And the goal of the watershed protection plan is to think holistically. So we don't want to just look at the water, we also want to look at the land. And we coordinate all the activities to manage both water quality and quantity. It's a stakeholder-driven process, and it's really a grassroots initiative. And by doing this, it gives the decision-making power to the local groups most vested in the goals of the project. And I apologize, I don't know if this is the easiest diagram to see, but this is the pathway to a watershed protection plan, and will help guide through the talk. So as I said before, I'm working on a healthy watershed protection plan and not an impaired water body. And these are really interesting because our goal is to maintain the aquatic ecological integrity by protecting the highest quality watersheds or any of those intact components. And the components are given here in this diagram. So we have multiple threats that are in our watershed, and our goal is to stop these threats from becoming issues. So we have pockets of problems, and we want to cut those off before they become any larger. And I think I'm probably preaching to the choir at this, but if you do economic valuation on ecosystem services, in general, it costs about 5 times less to protect a resource that you have rather than going back and restoring something for its use. And so the project that I'm working on is funded through the Clean Water Act, Section 319H, and we have a grant through EPA and the Texas State Soil Water Conservation Board. And now I want to set the scene of where I'm coming from. So I am in Texas at the Llano River Field Station, and excuse the pronunciation, but that's the local vernacular. That's how people say it. So we're located in the Texas Hill Country, and as you can see from this map, the Hill Country is outlined in red, and it's really the heart of Texas. It literally is because of where it's located, but also because of its high proportion of springs. So this map shows all of the springs that are in the state of Texas, and we have about 1,800 springs. The Llano River is of particular importance because of its pristine water quality as well as the water quantity. And again, here I have another map. The Hill Country is shown, hope that works, there in that box, and then this is our watershed, which we're working in. And the Llano River has been given a number of distinctions. It was named by the Nature Conservancy as one of the last great ecosystems worthy of special preservation. And is also listed as one of the top 10 waters to watch just last year by the National Fish Habitat Action Plan. And then Texas Parks and Wildlife has named it an ecologically significant stream, and it's considered one of the benchmark rivers in the Hill Country area, and it's used to look at attainment use standards. And this is just a pretty picture of the river in the fall. So our watershed protection plan begins with building our partnerships. And in our region, we have the South Llano Watershed Alliance, which was formed in 2008. And it's a citizen group that all came together out of their concern for the river and their love of that area. And their mission is to preserve and enhance the South Llano River and the adjoining tributaries. So that brings in the north prong, and that's also part of our study site. And they want to encourage land and water stewardship. And their big push is through education. And I wanted to mention them early on in the talk because they're one of the driving forces behind getting the funding for the Healthy Watershed Protection Plan. And so through our plan, we're working very hard to empower the stakeholders. We really want them to be the driving force behind the plan, and we want them to come up with the ideas, and we just want to be one of the sources of information to guide them to their ideas. And so our entire project is voluntary, and as mentioned by the members up here on the panel, we're doing the best we can to make the process completely transparent. So all of our meetings are public. Everyone's invited to them. Our listserv is now up to, I think, 530 people. So we really reach a broad audience. And by empowering the stakeholders, it helps them become vested in the project. And they can contribute what they have for their desires and things. And so this is just a picture of one of our meetings. This was our first rollout meeting, and we were excited. We had a pretty full house. And again, we have to capitalize on our partnerships. So this project was made possible by a number of people, including Texas Tech, where I'm employed, as well as Texas Water Research Institute. And another big component of a watershed protection plan is public outreach and education. And we're doing the best we can with this through a series of seminars. And this is just an example here. I listed a few, but of particular interest, I think, is the Texas Water Symposium. This is an hour-long discussion, and every year the topics vary. But the entire thing is taped and then broadcast on Texas Public Radio. And so that helps us really reach a broad audience. And our seminars are usually hosted with the South Llano Watershed Alliance, and so that's their website up there for other projects that they've done. And part of our watershed protection plan is to develop a watershed-based curriculum. And at Texas Tech, we're very fortunate that we house an outdoor school, and we bring students from K through 12 into our area and to our community and teach them about the watersheds. And this little acronym up here, TEACS, is the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So we're making sure to align with the curriculum that they would get in school. And of particular importance to this, I think, is with the movement right now with No Child Left Inside and trying to make all Texans environmentally literate. And so we're doing the best we can to get kids outside and to get them educated about the environment. So a lot of these things are happening concurrently. We're working really hard to build our partnerships, but we're also moving into the next phases of the project, and we've already started to characterize all of the watershed conditions. And so this is the research component of the project. And this is what I am in charge of, making sure that all of our equipment's working and logistics and things like that. We are collecting data at 14 river sites, which is split between the North and South Llano Rivers, and we have 6 spring sites. And at each of the sites, we collect water quality measurements, water quantity, we look at all the fish communities, and we also look at the macroinvertebrates and do a habitat assessment. In addition, we had a big push to do mapping, and so we flew aerial imagery and are looking at land use and land cover, as well as we're going to float the river and look at the areas that we have invasive species and any cut banks. And as I mentioned before, we have a number of threats to our watershed, but we're hoping to stop these threats from becoming issues. So I quickly want to run through some of the threats that we have in our area. Our biggest problem is brush, and this picture here is of the Texas Hill Country, and as you can see, it all is the same. It's a uniform brush. And our biggest components of the brush are ash juniper, which people commonly refer to as cedar. We have live oak and mesquite. And the reason we care so much about this is because of the water usage. So this graph shows you different plant species and the gallons of water that they use per tree per day. And as you can see, there's a large range, but all of this water is water that could be in our river system if we didn't have the overabundance of brush. And things have gotten out of control in this area because we have completely stopped burning. There used to be a lot of wildfires that would go through here, as well as controlled burns, and there's been a big effort for fire suppression. Our other issue is invasive species, both plants and animals, and this picture here was taken right outside of my office door. These are axis deer, and the reason we have such a problem with axis deer is because the hill country makes its money off of hunting. So people come in and they pay big bucks to go out and try to shoot different deer, and they love exotics because exotics just give them a thrill. So they brought in the exotics and they got out, and now they are just completely overpopulated. So the axis deer, we have such a big problem with them, not only from them trampling the ground, but they eat all of the riparian vegetation. And so this is just an example of an exclosure we have on campus. And you can see we still have plants inside, but outside they've kind of denuded that ground. Our other plant species that are problems are the elephant ear, giant cane, and chinaberry. And on the left here is a picture of elephant ear. And again, we care so much about these because they're pretty heavy water users. And to put it in perspective, I attached some dollars with this. So if we pretend that 1 acre-foot of water costs $100, and 1 acre of riparian area of elephant ear uses 17,500 acre-feet of water per year, and then say we have 10 miles of this occurring, that's a cost of $1.75 million per year in the water usage from these plants. So we're proactively going out and removing the plants that we have. And I also have to add that this is a picture from San Marcos, Texas, and our elephant ear aren't nearly that bad. And then the picture on the right is a picture of giant cane, and they occur usually just in one patch. And so that's just one patch we have on campus that we're treating. Our other big issue is feral hogs. This is something that's statewide, and they come in and they just rip up all the ground. And the other problem is they become very smart. So when you put out traps like this, it will catch one hog, and then all the rest of them will go by, and they'll learn not to come back to that area. And the final threat that we have, which is happening nationwide, is the fragmentation of our land. So Texas has some very big ranches, and they're being sold in parcels and becoming ranchettes. And the different practices on the land are forcing issues in the river. For example, the cut banks here, as well as different problems with erosion, and this is usually from overgrazing. So we have already gone through and we have issues that we've identified, but we're also trying to work towards solutions, and we're trying to have our stakeholder groups come up with these solutions as well. But I'm just going to give you a brief example of what we're doing. So for example, our brush control, what we're doing at this point, the very first thing we did was identify where the brush is. And I know you can't see this map very well, but hopefully it looks purple, and all the purple is brush. So it's very thick, and we're trying to go through and figure out the highest density areas and see where those are in relation to our spring sites. And if we can target those locations and do some best management practices, which would include clearing, we're hoping that it will enhance the water quality as well as increase the flow. And the way that we're going to target our locations is a combination of using the data we've collected here as well as a model, and we're using EDIS or EDIS, depends on who you ask. And this will simulate the flow and water quality at these smaller scales. And we're hoping that by doing this, we can show what brush control can offer, and then we're hoping to attract some money for future projects. In addition, with the brush management, we're in a unique situation that our watershed has the Llano River field station. And Texas is a highly private area. About 95% of the land is private. And so since we have this field station in the watershed, we're using that as an example. And we have a demonstration area that we're installing. And just one example is shown here on the right. This is what we call a wildlife guzzler, and it's a rainwater harvesting system that can then provide water to the animals. But our main thing is what we're trying to do with the brush sculpting is that brush clearing is very expensive to do, and we're partnering with the private sector with a consulting company. It's called the Aquifer Group, and he has devised a scheme that makes it profitable to the landowners to clear brush. So he clears the brush and lets it lay fallow for a bit, and then he's harvesting all of that cedar and turning it into a biofuel. So we're going to have an example of his brush sculpting project on campus, as well as some different best management practices. And at the end of this year, we're installing some wind and solar energy examples, as well as this picture down here on the left. Right next door, our next county over, we have a company called Mason Greenstar, and they create these building blocks out of recycled materials. And so our newest building is going to be made of this material. So we'll have all this on display at campus, and that's part of our outreach and education component. And furthermore, as I mentioned, we're at the field station, and we have public access, and we are able to connect a bunch of different activities. So We have the conservation demonstration area that I just mentioned. We're also installing a Discovery Point trail. And this trail will let people walk all around campus and see the different practices. But the really neat part about this is that it links into our paddling trail. And so as I mentioned before, Texas has a lot of private land, which you can see in this graph here. And so where we are in the Upper Llano, we have different public access points that people can put in their kayak, and then kayak down the river, get out at the field station, walk around, see all these best management practices, and then get back into the kayak and head on their way. And all of this is made possible through all of our partnerships. And Texas Parks and Wildlife has been a huge player in this. And they have something called the Landowner Incentive Program. And so they're providing the money to keep the land in good shape, and then we're trying to focus on the river and tie it all together. In addition, they have a funding source through the Guadalupe Bass Restoration Initiative, and the Guadalupe basses are state fish, and there are some issues with it hybridizing with some of the other largemouth bass that have been introduced into the area. But the Llano River has the most genetically unaltered population. And then in addition, as I mentioned before, we're doing treatment of all of our invasives, and we're trying to catch them before they become a problem. And we're educating the public to identify invasives through a series of seminars. We had a Texas Invasives workshop, and this was put on for free. And texasinvasives.org was where you could find more information, as well as a watershed steward program and to learn about the feral hogs. And because of our deer issue, any replantings that we do, we make sure to put exposures up. Otherwise, they don't survive. And again, all of these things are happening concurrently, but I just wanted to quickly touch on the implementation plan. I think that's one of the most important parts of a watershed protection plan, because we can talk all day long about what we found and what we want to do, but unless we provide a solution to facilitate all of these action items, it won't happen. And so that's what we're working on now with all of our local stakeholders. And I think most of you all know this, but the Healthy Watersheds provide a lot of ecosystem services at little to no cost. And so protection and being proactive, I think, is one of the best ways to keep a watershed in good shape. And conservation is a wise investment. So this is a picture of the Llano River that I took just last week. So it's really, we're greening up out there. And finally, if you want any more information on the plan, I have some fact sheets, as well as the South Llano Watershed Alliance website. They house all of our information. And I wanted to give a quick thank you to all of the partners, because this project is a pretty large scale, and we couldn't do it without all of these people. With that, I'll take questions. Thank you.